Hi friends, it's Hannah and I'm so glad you're here. Today I'm going to be transforming a beautiful cutting board with a front on it that's wavy, that's already been painted, that will make a beautiful planter. I begin by adding 2 coats of Waverly chalk paint in plaster and letting the coats dry completely before I add the second coat. And once the second coat is completely dry, I'm going to distress it. So I begin using a sanding block and some 220 grit sandpaper just to begin to scuff up the front a little bit. And as you can see, there's a little bit of light distressing, but I wanted to wet distress this piece. So I took a paper towel and dampened it, and you really need some elbow grease with this technique. Rub quite vigorously over the paint and you will begin to see the paint color show through. I was really happy that this was already painted a dark green because I knew that paint would show through beautifully with wet distressing and give it a very authentic aged look. And after I was finished with that, I just used the sandpaper and went around all the edges to give it a final distressing. And I absolutely love the aging and the distressing on the front of this piece. The next thing that we're going to do is paint an apple tree on the front. And if you've never painted before, this is the easiest technique in the world. I just use regular acrylic paint from the craft store, 3 Q-tips, and a brush that's this size. I begin by drawing the trunk and the branches on the tree with plain brown acrylic craft paint. And you can't go wrong when you're drawing a trunk and branches on a tree. It's one of the easiest things to do. The only difference on this tree is some of the branches are going to be facing downward because we're making an apple tree. And when the apples are on the branches, they pull the branches down because the branches are so laden with fruit. So just continue to add branches, and until you like the way that it looks, make sure that you add some of the branches facing downward. And I covered quite a large portion of the front of this with branches because I wanted the tree to really be prominent looking on the front. And once I am finished drawing all the branches, I then move to using the Q-tips. And the colors that I used from the craft store are black, brown, dark green, light green, yellow, red, and white. Now I'm going to use the Q-tips and I am going to dab them into the dark green paint. And holding the 3 Q-tips together, I simply dab around all of the branches to make the leaves. This is so easy to do. Just hold the Q-tips firmly together with your fingers, dip them into the paint, and dip and press all around the tops of the branches, and you will automatically add the leaves. I love this look. My gran taught me how to paint trees like this many years ago, and I still do it. Now, I'm not an artist and I'm not a painter, but I love this way of making trees, and I think that they're so cute and they work absolutely great on a craft project, especially when you're doing a distress project with an aged look. Either use fresh Q-tips or dry out the top of the Q-tips and add the light green paint after you've finished with the dark green paint, and just go over the top of the dark green paint with the light green paint all around the tops of the branches. And I have not sped this up because I want you to see how fast and how easy it is to make a tree. Next, I add the yellow paint and I go right above the light green paint. I add a little bit on the light green paint, and then I go above the light green paint and I go all around the tree, adding more color to the branches. And I just keep dabbing it on, and then I go into the middle of the tree with the yellow, and just to give it some light. And actually, there's no right or wrong way to do this. You add as much or as little of the light green, the dark green, and the yellow until you're happy with the way that the tree looks. Once I finished with the yellow paint, I took some more of the light green paint and I added it to the tips of some of the branches because apple trees are not uniform looking. The branches are all different sizes, so I wanted to give it more of the look of an apple tree. And then I just go back in with dark green paint to bring the definition back to the tree, but you stop where you're happy and however you want to color your tree and however many colors you want to add into it. It's your tree. You stop when you're happy with the way that the tree looks. At this point, I'm really satisfied with the way that the tree, the branches, and the leaves look. So I'm going to take my other paintbrush and I'm going to mix it in with some brown and some green, and we're going to do a shadow on this tree. So I add a shadow, then I go in with the lighter green paint and I just draw in grass with a little bit of a hillock behind the tree from all the way across the bottom. Then I come in with orange paint and yellow paint and I just make little zigzags with the paint, and I'm adding flowers onto the grass. So I just continue with the yellow and the orange and I do the zigzags to make the flowers, and I just continue until I'm happy with the way that the flowers look on the grass. And you stop when you're happy with the way that it looks. The next thing that I do is I'm going to add the apples to the tree. I use a single Q-tip and I dip it straight into the red paint and dab on the apples. Apples tend to grow in little clusters, so I added some clusters of 2 and 3 on the branches, but I also added single apples every once in a while on in the tree because there's always that lone apple that is growing on the tree. So just place the apples as you see fit. I'm adding a lot of apples. This apple tree is going to be laden with fruit, and I love seeing all the apples on it. I continue to add apples until I'm completely satisfied with the way that it looks. I love painting. To me, it's so relaxing. It's my absolute favorite craft to do. And this apple tree is so easy to make and so fun to make. Believe me, you will be so fulfilled and proud of yourself after you hand paint this tree. I add white paint on the left-hand side of the trunk, on the left-hand side of the tree, and on the right-hand side, I add it above the branches because we have a shade on the right side. We want to add light to the left side. Then I take my finest tip brush and I add a combination of black and brown, and I extend the branches to the apples. You can skip this point if you don't feel comfortable doing it, but I love the way that it looks, and it only takes an extra minute or two to add all the branches that connect the apples. And I love seeing the branches through the tree. I think it gives the tree more dimension. So I continue to add with my finest brush little branches that connect the apples. And I'm loving the way that this looks. I'm really proud of my hand-painted apple tree. And then I add the darker brown on the trunk. And the next thing that I do is I just finish up with the flowers, and I add some apples to the ground with the Q-tip and the red paint. I add brown and black together again, and I reapply the shadow because it got covered up with everything that I added to it, and I wanted the shadow to be more prominent. And this is our hand-painted apple tree, all done with one paintbrush, paints from the Dollar Tree, and Q-tips. I love the way that our tree turned out. It's going to be perfect to add florals to it once it dries. And of course, the florals that I add to it are picks that I brought from the Dollar Tree of apples. They did not have these at the store, and I purchased them online, but I thought they were absolutely perfect. And they did have a gold hue on top. So I went back to my paints, and using the small brush, I dipped it in the yellow paint, and I added just a dab of yellow paint onto each apple. And I think that that makes such a difference in how the apples look. They really, really resemble the apples that are placed inside of the planter. And I continue to add a few more of the apple picks, and I'm so loving the way this looks. And the next thing that I do is I add pomegranate picks that I purchased from the Dollar Tree, and I only had 3 of them, but it was exactly the right amount. I added one on the right hand side, one on the left hand side, and one in the center. And this is looking so great. I'm so pleased with the way that it's turning out. And I'm just going to add a few more picks of the apples to give it more fullness and height. And with that, this project is complete. I so enjoyed making this project for you, and I hope that it inspires you to make something beautiful. If you like this project, please share it with your friends, like and subscribe, and hit the notification button so you'll be notified the next time that I do a video. Once again, thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you next time.